Hey guys, welcome back to our Wednesday, April 22nd video lecture. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so first slide, what to do with Germany? The political fate of Germany was one main cause of Cold War tensions. After World War II, the Allies had divided Germany and its capital, Berlin, into 4 occupation zones. We had talked about this on Monday. But that was not going to be a perpetuous situation. Eventually, at some point, those nations are going to have to leave. So what do you do with Germany once those occupation zones are lifted? That becomes a major question. Well, in March of 1948, the United States, Great Britain, and France announced plans to merge their 3 occupation zones and form a new country, the Federal Republic of Germany. It's better known as West Germany. The 3 allies agreed that this reunited Germany would have a democratic government and a capitalist economy. Again, it would reflect Western values. Their decision greatly angered the Soviets, who controlled both Eastern Germany and access to the former German capital of Berlin, which lay in the Soviet occupation zone. Next slide. The Berlin blockade. On June 24th of that same year, the Soviet Union imposed a blockade on Berlin. Now, this halted all land travel into the city from Allied occupation zones. The Soviets believed that the Berlin blockade would force the Allies to give up either Berlin or their plan for a West German state. What they did not understand was how committed not only the United States, but Great Britain and France were to making sure West Germany became a reality. Instead, General Lucius Clay, the commander of U.S. forces in Germany, called for resistance to the Soviet blockade. If we mean to hold Europe against communism, we must not budge. Germany, at least half of it, was going to be pro-Western. There was no doubt about it, right? The conflicts that have taken place in the previous decades made sure that U.S. influence was going to be widespread throughout Germany, specifically Western Germany and eventually Western Berlin. Again, if you've ever heard about the Berlin Wall, keep that in mind as we're moving forward. This is going to become a hot spot for the Cold War. Okay, next slide. The Berlin Airlift. One of the most extraordinary events in human history. The Soviet Union aims to choke Berlin off from the West. Well, this is what President Harry Truman said. The future of democracy requires us to stay, when talking not only about Western Germany, but about Western Berlin. He feared that the loss of Berlin would cause Germany to entirely fall into the hands of communism. He ordered a massive airlift of not only food, fuel, medical supplies, all vital supplies be sent to Berlin. Now, they are stopping land travel, but they're not stopping air travel. Over the next several months, thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of U.S. planes will fly goods into Berlin and drop them into the city, right, to help the people. Germany officially divides. Next slide. Over the next 10 and a half months, pilots made over 270,000 flights into West Berlin, carrying nearly 2.5 million tons of supplies. The Berlin airlift kept the hopes of the city's 2 million residents alive and symbolized the West's commitment to resisting communist expansion. Even though our conflict with Germany was real, and it was brutal, and it was violent, we were not going to let these people fall into the laps of the Soviet Union. Now, by the spring of 1949, the Soviets realized that their policy had failed. They may be stopping land travel, but they're not going to shoot down planes full of food and risk a war. So officially, it becomes 2 countries. Communist East Germany and Democratic West Germany. The image on your slide here, I always find very intriguing. I've seen it many times. You can see how the western portion of Berlin has more modern LED lights, and the eastern portion of Berlin still has old halogen lights. And that's today. You can still see where that divide took place from the air at night. It really is a phenomenal picture. Okay, so moving on to our next slide. NATO is formed. As political divisions increased, tensions in Europe and the superpowers would form new military alliances. Well, in 1949, the United States, Canada, and 10 other Western European countries formed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, better known as NATO. It still exists to this day. NATO's founding European members were France, Luxembourg, Belgium, the Netherlands, Iceland, Italy, Britain, Denmark, Norway, and Portugal. Greece and Turkey would join shortly thereafter in 1952, and West Germany would join officially in 1955. And this is a map that you can see today, NATO nations. Okay, next slide, Article 5. This is really the meat portion of NATO. This is the big alliance portion that made NATO, in the Soviets' mind, such a threat to them. NATO members pledged to consider an attack on any member nation as an attack on all, and formed a standing army to defend Western Europe from a Soviet invasion. The United Nations played a key role in creating NATO's stability. Or rather, the United States, played a key role in creating the stability, providing not only money, but troops, leadership, all of the things necessary to make a global alliance of this size and complexity possible. Now, through this alliance, the United States took another step away from its old isolationist policies. Again, First World War, the United States is very reluctant to join in the fighting. And then you have the Zimmerman Telegraph. Okay, Germany wants Mexico to invade the southwestern United States. That draws us into the conflict. World War II, once again, the United States is very hesitant. Not nearly as hesitant as we were with the First World War, but still hesitant to enter the conflict. Then Pearl Harbor happens. After the Second World War, the U.S. is much less willing to simply step off the global stage. Right after the First World War, we make our presence felt, and then we go back to isolation. After the Second World War, that's just not something that we do. The United States still has a global influence to this day. We have military bases all over the planet today. Prior to World War II, that would have been seen as an impossibility. Post-World War II, that seems like the only way forward for our country. Okay, moving on to our last slide of the day, the Warsaw Pact. NATO's establishment prompted the Soviet Union to form its own security alliance in 1955. Under the Warsaw Pact, the Soviet Union, Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Eastern Germany, Hungary, Poland, and Romania united for their mutual defense. In essence, it is a communist NATO. NATO and the Warsaw Pact members began to see each other as enemies, formally dividing Europe into two armed camps. All right, now we're going to talk more about the Cold War in Europe in the coming weeks, but as for tomorrow, our final video lecture for the week, we're going to talk about how the Cold War actually turns hot in Asia, okay, specifically with the Korean War. All right, as always, guys, stay well, stay healthy. I miss you, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.